Good morning, everybody. Y'all are having way too much fun. Let's put a stop to that. No, it is good to be here. It's good to see you. I am, as always, I'm excited about this lesson. There's a lot of really good stuff here. And actually, we're like sort of straddling a couple lessons right now. We're in lesson 2, about to get into lesson 3. And we're still very much in the introduction phase of this book and the topic in general. Actually, in lesson 3, we're going to get sort of a bird's eye view of the entire rest of the class. We're going to focus on different aspects of stuff we're going to see in chapter 3. So that'll be helpful for us as we're thinking about where we're going from here and what we're going to be doing the next 3 months or however long we have in here. We are going to jump back in to lesson 12 here in a second, but first, Aaron Holly, would you care to lead us in a prayer? Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful to you for another first day of the week that you've blessed us with and the opportunity to come together and study from your word and worship you. We pray that you be with our brother Jason today as he leads this class, that he will do so in a manner that's pleasing to you, and that we will be able to be as receptive to what is taught as possible, so that we might increase our zeal for you and be able to express this zeal to our religious neighbors, to help win souls to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. So if you remember, we've been talking a lot, obviously, about zeal because that's what this is about. What word is usually associated with zeal in the Bible? Fire. Well, I didn't mean to yell that. I'm sorry. Yeah, we might have. I'm glad there's no fire department. Firefighters. There we go. Do what? Yeah, that would have been really bad. So they would kick me out. Don't do that. But in order to make fire, we have that triangle thing. And what are the 3 components of fire? What do you need? Heat, fuel, environment. Yeah, you need some kind of spark, energy source to get it going. You need something so the fire keeps going. You need wood or whatever, so that's your fuel. And then you need oxygen. You need something that's going to continually fuel the fire so it doesn't go out. We talked about the heat source. When it comes to our zeal, our heat source comes from the Lord. I mean, it's God, because God He's a consuming fire, but if we follow Him, He is a fire that guides us, He leads us. So He is the ultimate fire. And that's where we get that. That's how we get sparked. That's how we get ignited. Then we have the perfect fuel. What was the fuel that we need for our fire? Spirit. It's Christ. Yeah. And so all of those attributes of things that Christ did in His life, how He was able to be zealous and continue doing the Lord's will His entire life. You saw all those. Those are 5 things there: courage, energy, diligence, wisdom, loving service. And the more that we can put those characteristics in our life, the more fuel we have for our fire, so that helps us as well. Now, we didn't get to talk about this last one yet, but the environment. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you're building a fire, you can have the perfect wood, just readily ignitable. You can have the perfect spark source. Maybe you have one of those torches things, propane? Yeah. And you have all that stuff ready. But then it comes a downpour and it's thunderstorm. You're going to have a hard time getting that fire lit if it's constantly raining. Your environment does matter. No, it doesn't matter how strong your source is or how much fuel you have. If you have a rainstorm around you, it's not going to work. So we need the proper optimum environment. And here it says it's purity. And I like this in a lot of ways. Why would it be difficult to get our fires of zeal burning if we have a problem with purity? Why is that an issue? And I'm talking about purity in the broad sense. I mean, anything that is not godly, not helpful, anything that we would consider sinful would be impure. Why would we need to get rid of all that stuff before we could really have a good, zealous fire burning? If you're going to be zealous for the word, it's hard to be zealous for something that convicts you. That's true. Amen. Because if we're honestly observing scriptures, reading, and understanding what the Lord wants us to do, we're going to constantly be in this sense of, well, I'm not doing that, and man, I did that, and I shouldn't have. So there's going to be this constant sense of, I don't know, it's like you're being defeated every time that you go. Yeah, absolutely. What else? What other reasons are there for needing to have a pure environment? Yeah, yeah. It should be, yeah, 100%. I mean, what fellowship does darkness have with the light? I mean, it has nothing. I mean, dark, light, that's complete opposites. And so, yeah, if we're going to continue in the environment that we were before we came to the Lord, that's not going to be helpful as we try to continue this journey. So there's a few sentences here. What Christians really need is an environment that is conducive to both nurturing and challenging their zeal. There's corruption all around us. There is. I mean, this world, if we were just like a normal human being, none of us should be normal, by the way. But if we were normal like the world around us, you see where that leads. I mean, it leads to darkness. It leads to despair. And that's why we have things like Titus 2:14 that talks about, Jesus, his goal was to purify us, to get us out of that, to redeem us, and to build on that. And so we need to realize what the importance of that sort of thing. There's a scripture that isn't mentioned in the book, but I think is extremely helpful. Go to Psalm number 101. Psalm 101. If you ever really want to work on purity, on getting your environment right around you, this is a really, really good psalm for that. We'll just read one specific verse out here. The whole thing is really good. But would someone could read Psalm 101, verse 3? Awesome. Thank you so much. So did you hear that? I hate the work of those who fall away. I will set nothing worthless or vain, whatever, in front of my eyes. And that is, this is like, I don't know, it's hard to do sometimes. Because how many worthless things are there around us to set in front of our eyes? And how much do other people enjoy that? I mean, that's something that our entertainment, just the stuff that the world is involved in around us, a lot of it's not only worthless, but it's more than worthless. It's straight up sinful. And would we use that as entertainment? Like, is it something that we want to just be putting into our heads, something that we're constantly around? Now, that could apply to so many different things. I'm being intentionally vague with that, because there are so many things that we need to watch our influences. Do we have the choice of what to put on the TV in front of us? Yeah. Do we have the choice of what kind of music that we're going to have playing, that we listen to, and all that? Yeah, we have a choice. And we can make the choice to say, I'm not going to put any of that garbage in front of me, because it's totally worthless. I hate these bad deeds, and I want to stay away from it completely. I mean, do you remember what Paul says in the book of Romans about those things that not only do we not want to do something, but the part about giving hearty approval of those things? We got to be really careful with what we approve of by what we're watching and interacting with. So when it comes down to it, we have a choice to make, and we have the ability to take away some of those influences. Like, nobody's forcing you to watch certain things, listen to certain things, go to certain places, whatever. I'm going to put a pin in that one, but then come back to this other thing. Can we control everything that happens around us? No, no. And so there's this too. Because some people make the argument, well, since you can't control everything, you can't control what other people are saying, doing, whatever, that means it's just kind of useless to try to eliminate those things because you're going to hear those words anyway. You're going to see those things anyway. You're going to like experience that in the world around you. So why does it matter? Well, I think it matters a lot because as much as you can control that environment to make it the most, and going back to the fire analogy, the most optimum environment for your fire, then that's better. You know, even if there's like a torrential downpour, if you have a good enough shelter, you can still build a fire, right? And so the more we can get out of the elements of, you know, eliminating some of that, sure, there's going to be some rain that blows in, and there's going to be some things that happen, and there's going to be some of those situations. But if we are setting ourselves up for the optimum fire-making characteristics, then we're going to be a lot better off. So using things like this, working on purity, working on the input of things around us, that's going to be very, very helpful. Matthew 10:16, the verse that's mentioned here in that paragraph, top of page 13. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be as shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. What do you see in that? What does that passage do for you? What do you think when you read that?
Jesus knew that the apostles and all his disciples were going to have difficult times,
Yeah.
as we will have difficult times, but need to be on guard, beware, be as shrewd as possible, and try our best to stay apart from that.
Yeah, amen. I mean, there it is. We understand that there's going to be difficult times. There's going to be those influences that we have no control over, and they're just going to be there. And so what do you do with that? Well, you have to be smarter than those influences. You have to realize those are coming, and you guard yourself where you can and be ready for those things that you can't control. And the only way we can do that is if we are proactive in eliminating the things that would bring us down otherwise. We have to do this if we want to continually keep this zeal fire burning. It's really important to do that, keep the purity of our heart. Anything else that comes to mind as we're discussing the purity, the optimum environment, those sorts of things?
Just a thought of a story, my mind served me right, it was written by Robert Frost, To Build a Fire. Everybody here has an opportunity. It's a short story, you probably can find it on the internet, but it talks about a man who goes out into the cold to travel to a dig site, and he falls in the water, and he's going to freeze. He has to build a fire before he freezes. And the first fire he builds under a tree with snow. The fire melts the snow, and it puts out his fire. And so then it goes from there to desperation as he's starting to get into hypothermia. But it's a good read for, it's about arrogance, the whole thing, and him being in this harsh environment, and he's not prepared.
That's really cool. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's so, I'm going to write that down. What was it called?
To Build a Fire.
To Build a Fire. Interesting. I like that. You see, the cool trick that there is when we have biblical concepts that use metaphors to try to teach us different things, is you can make stories that weren't necessarily designed to teach a biblical principle or whatever to fit, and you can learn stuff from that. And so I really enjoy that. If we're not careful, if we're not watching what's around us, the very actions that we're taking can lead to our downfall and detriment. And so you really got to pay attention to the environment and what's going on. Anything else?
Bad influence of others can certainly weaken your zeal.
Mm.
You think that you can help other people's zeal by hanging around them, but normally they decrease your zeal.
It's true. Yeah, and that's something that's like, well, I'll be the good influence. And sometimes that works, but you really have to watch out and guard yourself. You know, the opposite side of this, though, are there people that we could associate ourselves with that are zealous that would help us and sort of help fuel our fires? Yeah. I mean, I guarantee if you really think hard enough, you could probably think about people in your life, people that you know, that man, they have zeal. And I want to be part of that. And so look for ways you could get in touch with them. And there's going to be some stuff later in the book talking about that very thing. But, ask questions. How do you do that? How do you constantly stay? When I was in college, I had there were tons of just really good, strong, zealous, fiery in good ways, people who, I saw what they were doing and I saw how spiritual they were. And I'm just like, you're a machine. Like, how do you continually do that? How do you have the energy to just constantly be involved with something spiritual and lifting people up? And that was just such an encouraging thing for me to see. And so, I spent as much time with those people as possible. And that's what you can do. We realize that we want to make the most optimum environment. And most of the time when it comes to purity, these things, we focus on eliminating the bad stuff, which is true. That's a good starting point. But what about finding good things to do and finding good people who are just really strong in that and working to build those relationships and focus on that. That can be super helpful. So I would challenge you all to think about that. Think about who in my life do I know, who I've been around that's just really zealous, and how do they do that? And work on reaching out to them, spending time with them, and focusing on those sorts of things. That can help everybody. So yeah, a lot to consider there. Anything else about purity? The majority of these questions at the end of chapter 2 are very focused on where you are with this, what's going through your head. So number 1, self-examination. Which component does your zeal most need? You can't answer that for anybody else other than you. Do you need that initial spark? Do you need to get closer to the Lord? Do you need to develop a greater love for Him? Do you need to just get close to the Lord to be filled with that fire? Maybe that's where you are. Maybe you're lacking on the fuel department. You need more Christ-like character. It's just I just don't have the courage I need to, or the wisdom, or the energy, or the diligence, or loving service. So maybe you need to add some of those fuels in your life. Maybe that's what you need to focus on. Or maybe it is the purity thing, and maybe there are influences that you just need to get rid of, that you need to stay away from, or good positive influences that are missing that you need to put in your life. So there's a balance there, and that's a deeply personal question. And so you can think about that, think about what you need the most in this, and that's probably what you should focus on, 100%. And there are other questions here that talk about the different aspects of this and what stands out to you the most. What do you think is really important about that? How does this influence your zeal? And what can you do to work on this in the future? I hope that you will spend some time on that, just thinking through and working on that. As we go through the quarter, we'll get to some of that as well. Now, the other things there, that the prayer talks about using Psalm 51 as a starting point in helping build our purity, and realizing that we need a pure heart, and it's only God who can do that in us, and He's the one that supplies that. That's a good exercise to do if you haven't done that yet. Use that as a starting point in your prayer, and then keep going. It's really cool. All right, anything else up through chapter 2? Anything at all? I love that. I really appreciate that. So we have this. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've definitely done it. Like you're starting to build a campfire or fire in general, and you got like the little driest twigs, the smallest ones, and you got it in there, and it just flares up, and you're like, yes, I did it. But then you don't have like things that are more substantial that are going to be burning for a long time, and pretty soon it just burns up and it's gone. And I think that's the way a lot of Christians work. You know, you're baptized, you become a Christian, you're following the Lord, and you're so excited, but you just don't have deep roots. I'm switching some metaphors there, but you don't have enough fuel. You don't have this Christ-like character. You don't have these things, and you just kind of burn out, and it just fizzles, and then it's gone. And I think we've all probably been there at some point. But we do need to add these things so it's a continual slow burning, but it's still burning. I really appreciate that thought. That's really good. And as we go through these lessons, hopefully we can do things. The whole point of the book is developing a lifelong zeal. You know, it's not just developing a zeal that is really good for a couple weeks and you're really strong, and then you kind of fade out. But then next year, you know, January 1st rolls around, your resolutions, you're like, okay, here we go. And then you do it again, and then you fizzle out again. Like, no, we do need that long lasting. You need all of it, the whole approach. Anything else? So, lesson 3 is God's process, the 7 steps to follow. The way this is illustrated in the book is Jesus, when he was alive, he had some very specific things that he did with his disciples and the people who were closest to him. And in this book, we're going to think primarily about how he interacted with Peter. And there's several reasons for that. You see a lot of interactions that Jesus has with Peter. Peter's one of the, you know, you think about that zeal that he's on fire, but then it just like fizzles out real quick because he jumps out without thinking. And there's so many times where Peter does that. And Jesus is like, oh, Peter, no. Think about it. Think about what you're doing. But then, and I think it's also helpful, don't think I'm spoiling this for anybody, after Jesus leaves, Peter becomes one of the strongest, like rock-solid pillars of faith that we see a lot of the gospel was spread because of what Peter did. And he was definitely on fire there, and he had the wisdom to go along with it. So how do you get from such a flaky, you know, you're hot but you're not type of mentality to like someone who was like legitimately a rock, as his name Jesus gave him. Anyway, like how do you do that? Well, thankfully we see a few steps involved in that, and that's what the rest of the book is about. How do we use those steps to build our own zeal, and added bonus, how do we do that for others as well? Because if we're trying to help others inspired zeal in them, you know, that's what we need to focus on as well. Would someone care to read at the beginning of chapter 3, top of page 15, the scripture there, John 6, verses 68 and 69. Anyone can read that. Awesome. Thank you very much. So, I think here we see why Jesus thought he needed to spend so much time with Peter. Peter, there was a lot of good things about Peter. Now, there was obviously a lot of growth he needed to have. But when it came down to it, he had this strong desire. He knew who Jesus was, and he realized that there's nowhere else I can go that's going to have what you have. And so he continues to come back to him. And so Peter's he's a really interesting character to study in this, and I think that helps. So we're going to see this. How does Jesus start this fire? How does he maintain it? How does he give him fuel to go? And how is he able to do something that's sustainable? Keep in mind, he spent probably over 3 years with him, day in and day out. So there was this wasn't an overnight process. It took a while. But he did some things to try to help that. And I like how this goes. Talks about if you're building a campfire, what kind of things would you do? And it does make sense. If you look through, especially the top of page 16, if you have ever built a fire, it probably looks something like this. You prepare a place, you get your stuff ready, get a lighter, get a match, get something. Maybe if you're not very good with fire, you just get a torch and, that happens. Arrange your firewood. Typically, and I've found more luck if I'm able to, get that initial fire going and then add stuff to it and try to make sure I have enough to keep it going. Shield it from wind or rain. That's important. Cook some s'mores. Yum. Yeah. You got to use it. It's there, and what are you going to do with it? Share its heat. A lot of people can benefit from that. And stir the coals because sometimes you notice it's starting to go out a little bit. Let's keep it going. So there's things that we can do to do that. And this shows how Jesus did like the same stuff. He did the same things in order to get this in Peter and in other people. And I think we see this happening a lot. So let's look at this step by step. So the first one, step one, preparing your zeal. And it's like preparing the campfire. You go to a campsite and they didn't do a very good job of cleaning it up and there's like all this trash in it. Some of it might be flammable, some of it might not be. And you got to have a clean spot to where you can start the fire so that way, nothing else gets in the way and you have what you need. There's some preparation involved. It's also good to make sure, do I have everything I need? You don't just want to jump in and say, okay, let's burn stuff. And then you start a fire. It's like, wait, I don't have any firewood. I don't have what you need to be prepared with that. Few things that were going on with Peter. What kind of preparation did Peter have before Jesus? Do you know his background? Yeah, okay, he was a fisherman. Now, Jesus used that, and that was really interesting. You know his nationality? He was a Jew, as most of the disciples, all of them were. He was a Jew. What do you know about the Jews? Before Jesus came, do you think they had a relationship with God or not? Yeah, there we go. They had law. And they had a long history of having that relationship with the Lord. And so there was a lot in the law that helped lead them towards Jesus. Because if you analyze the Old Testament, it's always pointing towards Jesus. There's always that. And there's always this mentality. Go to Galatians 3. It's a really important verse. Jesus really knew who he was talking to. He understood who Peter was and what he, what drove him and what his life was about. But in Galatians 3, someone care to read verse 24? Awesome. So what led people to Christ? Law. Yeah, it was the law. The law led people to Christ because he was the fulfillment of the law. He was like what the law was pointing toward. Without the law, we wouldn't understand why we needed Jesus. And so the Jews especially had a leg up in that. They saw the need. They saw, because of the law of Moses, they understood what sin was. So it makes more sense if you understand the problem of sin before you have the solution in who Jesus is. So Peter was prepared because of his background with the law and with understanding the need for justification and what Jesus was going to bring. And so he had that. In addition, there was a person, a human being that was sent before Jesus to help guide the people back. Who was that? John the Baptist. And what was his goal? What was his whole thing? Yeah, to prepare the way. Now, it wasn't that preparing the way, he just had to, he was building a road. And he was like maintaining this physical well, I got to make sure that people know how to get to. No, it was preparing the heart. And we see this in the message that he was presenting. He preached a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. And he was trying to turn the people back to God. Did the Jews think that they needed to turn away from what they were doing to turn to God? No, they didn't. They thought, hey, we are God's people. Obviously God's happy with us. And we are doing everything that we need to do. Like, we are strong. We are on fire. We have this zeal. But they needed to turn away from their own selfish pride, ambition, all of that, in order to truly come to Christ. So that's what John the Baptist was. He was trying to push them back to God and prepare them for Christ. There are ways that we need to prepare our own heart. We probably have a very different background than Peter had. We probably weren't raised Jewish. Maybe you were. I'm not sure. But you have your background and you have your prior knowledge. But in order to take you from where you are now to where you need to be, we need to understand where you are now. And you have to accurately assess that, and we'll do some things to try and get to that. But what we need is to realize we need to prepare. And it doesn't matter where you are, it's just it matters that we have a plan of how to get to where we need to be. And thankfully, Jesus provides that way, and he shows us what we need. So no matter where you are, there's sometimes you hear people say like, oh, you can't get there from here. Well, you can get there from where you are. Doesn't matter where you are. Like, you can get there. So don't worry. Anything else on preparing, Zeal? Okay, this step 2, igniting. So actually getting that fire going and getting started initially. There was a lot that Jesus did, specifically for Peter and the other apostles, that would help them to come to grips with what he's doing. Sometimes if you read like Mark's account of the gospel, it's just like, well, Jesus walks up to these guys and it's like, follow me, and boom, there they are. It's like he had no interaction before. But if you read all of the gospel accounts, you understand that there were some interactions before, and there were some things that Jesus was doing to prepare them so that they would actually come and follow him. Look at John 1. So John 1, in about verses 35, about 35-ish. John the Baptist, so who we were just talking about before, he was there with a couple of his disciples. And he sees Jesus, and he points Jesus out, and he's like, here he is, like the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And he sends his disciples away to follow Jesus, so they become Jesus' disciples. And that was great. One of the people who did that, one of the people who was a follower of John the Baptist who turned, was Andrew. And Andrew was Simon Peter's brother. And so he went and said, hey, we found the Messiah. You got to come, you got to check this out, because this is the one we've been waiting for. You need to come and do that. Well, when he comes to Jesus, we see in verse 41, he goes, finds his brother Simon, and says, we found the Messiah, which translated means Christ. Verse 42, he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas, which is translated Peter. And what does that word mean, Cephas? Rock. Yeah. You are now going to be the rock. You're not going to be Simon anymore. No. You are the rock. Now, the second that Jesus said that to him, did Peter completely become the rock that he needed to be? No, he's just getting started. We see so many times where he just pulls these bonehead moves that we're like, why would you do that? Like, this is ridiculous, dude. Like, you should know better. But eventually, he does become it. Now, Jesus is just lighting this fire under him, saying, no, this is what you can be, and this is what I am going to show you how to be. And he gives that to him, and he calls him that name. Jesus doesn't, well, he does see where we are, but he also sees where we can be. And he knows that Peter is eventually going to be there. Now, he also does several things along the way. Do you remember the thing with the fish? Well, there's several things with fish, I guess. But do you remember, when Peter, it was after this, Jesus went and he found Peter and Andrew in the boat. They had been fishing all night, and they were actually, just cleaning up, fixing their nets and all that. And Jesus went into the boat. And remember what he told them to do? Go back out. He's like, no, go back out to the deep water and throw out your nets, and you'll see what you catch. And then Peter said, we've been fishing all night. There are no fish out there. We've checked, and there's nothing. We haven't been able to do this. But, you said to do it, so we'll do it. And so he gets out there, and you know what happens. There was a ton of fish, and Peter was like, oh, I'm so sinful. This is, obviously, you are the Messiah. And then Jesus made the famous statement. What did he say to them? I will make you fishers of men. There it is. And so he's building on, and once again, he's going back to the preparation thing. He's building on where Peter was and showing him what he could be. Then, you think about the miracles that Jesus did and all of that evidence that he supplied, the miracle at Cana, with the wedding feast, and all of the other things that the disciples saw that not a lot of other people were part of. It helped ignite that zeal in Peter, and he was able to see that. He had a personal connection, the thing with his mother-in-law. She had a fever, and then Jesus came in and just, boom, there it was, fixed automatically. There were so many faith-building things that happened. If you think about how igniting that zeal in us works, and why do we trust God? Why do we even come to Him? Do we have reasons to actually come to the Lord and listen to what He says? I think so. I think He has proof, and there's enough proof that if we dive into, we can find it, and He can help us through that. So part of igniting your zeal is to realize who Jesus is, what He's capable of, and what He can do for you individually in your life because of what He's done with other people as well. And so Peter kept getting more and more revealed to him. It was like Jesus was like, well, how about this? Watch this. And he's just constantly in a sense of amazement. Doesn't mean that he is just rock solid from the beginning. Doesn't mean that he has it all together and understands everything. No, he sees the power of God, and that's enough to keep him going. Maybe that's where we are right now. Maybe that's what you need. You need to just come in contact with the power of God more. Read and see what Jesus has done. Think through your own life of things that God has brought you through. Because I guarantee you, if you think about it, God has brought you through something. Probably multiple things. And we need to realize what He's done. So the closer we can get to God, that's what ignites us. That's what will push us to get closer to Him. Okay. Anything else on that part? Preparation, igniting? Amen. That was a really good point. Can we light a fire of zeal in someone who has no knowledge of who Christ is, or even feels like they have a need? Because a lot of people think, well, if you come across somebody and they're like, I'm a good person. I do, basically good deeds, and I'd mess up sometimes, but overall I'm a good person. So why would I really need something else? You're not gonna help them start a fire until they really realize where they are and their stance before God. If you don't know that you have a need, you're not gonna want to find the solution, and the solution's not gonna make sense. It's like, I don't need a solution. I am the solution. But no, we have to come to that knowledge. That's a really good point. And so maybe for us, that's That's where we need. A lot of times when we think through that, and I'm super guilty of this, we think about how we're teaching others and our effectiveness at reaching other people with the gospel. But we need to be reached too. We need that in ourselves. And so we need to realize where we are and how much we need that fire inside of us. So it's a self-reflection thing. It's something we have to know our stance before the Lord. That is really good stuff. Anything else in preparation? Igniting the zeal. Okay, what we're going to do, I think on Wednesday, Lord willing, we'll continue this. I think we will shoot for finishing chapter 3 on Wednesday. There's some things like the side of this. Make sure to look at 1 Kings 18 and the difference between Elijah, the prophets of Baal. Look at some of the passages toward the end. Think through some of this. Then we will jump in, Lord willing, next Sunday in the preparation and actually getting this going. So that's where we'll go. Thank you guys for all your comments. It was really, really good stuff. Appreciate it.